You need a divorce. I need a divorce. Everybody needs a divorce. I'll explain to you why on the other side. Let's go. Welcome to the Prompt Fam, where curiosity might have killed the cat, but it won't kill the conversation. I'm Damon Rich, the relationship GPT, and let's get into today's prompt. So I was having a conversation with a friend just the other day, and we started talking about just some trials he was going through, and it's like he's gone through 2 divorces, and he's really a dear friend, good guy, and he's always seeking to learn. How can he get better? How can he be a better husband? And so we were having this conversation, and he was explaining to me some things he was looking back on. Like, I wonder if certain things happen because these are things that I've done in my life. And so it's just catching up to me. I've not been that cheater, but I have at least cheated once. And I way back when I didn't understand, he was just getting into all of that. And we started to talk, and I said, man, listen, here's the thing. And I understand it because I said, you need a divorce. He said, brother, I'm already divorced. I'm a 2-time marriage failure. I've already failed. I said, bro, you didn't fail, you learned. Because every time you've gone through something in a relationship, you've sought to see how you could learn from it. You didn't just wallow in it, but you still need a divorce. And then I was very transparent and open with him, saying, and here's the truth, man. I need a divorce too. And the question was twofold. Why do I need a divorce? Divorce from what? And the second part of this is, how do I get a divorce? And that's what we're going to unpack here today, family. Listen, I want you to get active in these comments. I want you to drop your thoughts, your questions, your feedback in these comments, because we're going to get deep. Now, I want you to stick out to the end. This going to help you, because you need a divorce too. So the first thing I had to answer for him is, how do you get a divorce? I mean, he's personally been through it. I've been married for 25 years. I've not gone through it personally and physically and actually, although I have thought about it in 25 years. Me and my wife have discussed it in 25 years, but ultimately we decided to continue to get through and work and build with each other. And that takes 2 people. That takes 2 people. That's a different episode. I said, what did you have to go through in order for a divorce to happen? I want you to think about that. What do you have to go through in order for a divorce to happen? It's story time. So I told you my wife and I have at least had a conversation more than once about getting a divorce at various points, various trials that we've gone through in our marriage in 25 years. And the one time I feel like we got really dangerously close was when we suffered the greatest trauma in our marriage. Our marriage has suffered what I would call micro traumas. We had a house foreclosed on. I felt less than a man. I felt like I wasn't providing for my family because I lost a roof that was over their head. We had a car repossessed, and having that car repossessed, again, I'm feeling like I'm failing as a man, because it is my wife's car, the car she had before we got together, and she lost it, and she was doing fine before she met me. Maybe she's better off without me. We almost got evicted from a place we was even renting. And even when we got into our new home, we had some near misses and things. Now we're in a better place now. We're financially stable. We have some of those things, but those are things that have ridden me in the context of marriage and feeling adequate as a husband, adequate as a man, adequate as a father. And that led to a bigger trauma showing up in our marriage. And that's going to be a whole masterclass on that, whole masterclass on particularly healing from infidelity. That's entire masterclass. But that showed up. And when it showed up, of course, divorce is it's on the table. You thinking about it. But then you're like, nah, we're gonna fight, we're gonna fight, we're gonna fight. But then you get there and you're like, man, I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if we can do this. Do we have what it takes to heal and get to the other side of this? And when you feel like you don't have what it takes to heal and get through it, you go into divorce mode. You go thinking about, like, we had a whole conversation, when we're going to tell the kids, how we're going to tell the kids, who's going to do the filing, how are we going to go through all of that, how are we going to divide stuff up, how do we want to move. I want to make sure you're good, you make sure I'm good, but we just can't do this. So as I was talking to my friend and going through, I said, man, what were those steps? Now, he never filed for divorce, and I'll have to have him on the show to let him tell his story. But the first thing that happens in the divorce, as he and I were talking through this, is first, you have to make a decision. And I mean a clear decision that you want or need a divorce. What is divorce? It's separation. We teach from a faith-based perspective and the two becoming one. It's funny that it says that you should leave and cleave. And that word cleave not only means coming together, but it also means splitting apart. So now you have to decide that we want to split apart. We don't have the emotional stamina anymore. We don't have the desire and the care for each other anymore. We don't have the fortitude anymore to fight for this. We're exhausted, we're tired, we're over it. Or maybe you feel like you're fighting harder than they're fighting. Any number of reasons. Or that lame excuse, I fell out of love. And you know how I feel about falling in love. I don't want anybody to fall in love with me, because falling doesn't take effort. I want you to learn to love me. I want you to choose to love me, because that takes intentional effort and focus. But if you're going to get a divorce, one of the first things you have to do is you have to decide that you're going to split apart. You have to pronounce over your marriage that it is dying and it cannot be revived, right? You have to decide. Okay. The next thing you have to do, number two, is you got to communicate it. You got to communicate it with each other. People choose a whole lot of different ways to do that, but you got to communicate it with one another. I've seen some instances in people that I've coached that they didn't find out that the marriage was over until the spouse was gone out of town, like everything was fine, and the divorce papers came while they were gone. Or an instance where you show up home and the house is cleared out of all their stuff and the divorce papers are still left on the dresser or whatever remaining furniture in the kitchen. But some way that intent gets communicated. You confess it. I'm not only said I've decided in my mind, but I'm going to say it out of my mouth. Okay. Then you've got to go through the process. Part of the process in natural divorce is trying to mediate so you can come to something amicable. And in times, they might recommend therapy to hope that you can stop the split. But you've got to go through the process. And in the process, you've got to count up the costs. What is it going to cost me to get this divorce? Not just the price. I want y'all to stick with me, because this ain't going where you think it is. Not just the price of the divorce, like, oh, it's $1,500 for the attorney, or $1,000 for the attorney, or $2,000. No, not just the price, the cost. What is the emotional, psychological toll of you getting a divorce? What does that impact on you? What does that impact on your kids? What does that impact on your family? What does that impact even on your friends? Doggone it, what's the impact on the dog? Dog used to seeing you come home every night and feeding it. What's the psychological impact on the dog that's going through the divorce? Who gets the dog? We ain't doing no King Solomon stuff and splitting it down the middle. Who gets the dog? Who gets the cat and the goldfish? There's a psychological cost. But then you have to also separate what is common, because some things separate from what is common. Some things are easy. That's your four-wheeler. This is my luggage. That's your car. This is my jewelry. But what about the things that both of us have connection about? The memories, the timeshare, things we both equally value and we both want a part of, like kids. But you still have to separate what is common. Then after you separate what is common, this is part of the process. You got to wait, be consistent and responsive about letting go. So when I say you've got to wait, it's not like you sign the paperwork and it's boom. I hear divorces are taking up to a year now. So it's not just that quick, just that simple. You got to wait and be consistent and responsive about letting go. So what do I do then? What do I do while I'm waiting to let go? And what do you mean by being consistent and responsive? Like if they send you something or the attorney sends you something, you got to respond to that or you could lose out because you were unresponsive. So you got to be paying attention even while you're going through the process. You've got to start to already build this new life as if it is already finalized, which includes co-parenting arrangements and all of those type of things. But you got to wait and be consistent and responsive about letting go. Next thing is I got to show up for the final order. Got to go to court for the judge say I've looked at everything. Everything looks in order. Yeah, we can go ahead and grant this divorce. It's fine, final, and so ordered on this date that so and so and so and so are no longer married. Okay. And most people think that's where the end of divorce is. But I told my friend, I said, there's one more step. You got to move on. And I think that's the challenging part because something has just died and you got to mourn it and grieve it. But eventually you got to move on. Some people even think, I'm good. I started this divorce. I'm glad the divorce is over. And I'm glad I'm no longer married to them. And then they have those moments when they go through those years of first, that first Christmas, that first Thanksgiving, that first now, but I've got to move on. Not only move on physically, but I've got to move on mentally and psychologically. So, what am I talking to my dog about? He's already physically divorced from a wife, but he was telling me something that he was struggling with. And it's what prompted me to say, you need a divorce. I need a divorce. You need a divorce. From what? There are some things that we struggle with that impede our progress, impede our growth, impede our ability to have future healthy relationships because we didn't properly divorce them. And in the context of what me and my partner was talking about, we were talking about being able to move on from like memories of other women. Women that were in our past that left emotional wounds on us sometimes. Women that were in our past that left some pretty good memories. And it's hindering our ability to love and connect with our current spouse because we haven't decided to let go of those healthy or unhealthy memories. And I'm going to call them all unhealthy because if you're married and you think about another woman or man, that's unhealthy for your current marriage. So, but you haven't let it go. So in order to divorce, let me run back through this. I've got to divorce myself. I've been in a situation where something was so strong with me, a memory of a previous female was so strong with me that it almost seemed real. Y'all don't call me crazy now. It was a good moment in my life when I was facing down some of my darkest days, right? And in order to get rid of that memory, I had to make an active decision to divorce the memory. See, what we seem not to understand, especially when it comes to sex, is that sex was God's tool of covenant. So some of us need to get rid of a lot of illegal covenants that we have that we're toting around in our current relationship. See the shirt? Covenant math. 1 + 1 = 1. If you want your current covenant to be effective and reach its full potential, you need a divorce. And that divorce starts with you deciding of letting go of that moment. Some of us have got to, when we start talking about it, not only do I need to let go of that moment and divorce that moment, but then I've got to communicate it. Communicate it to who? It might be to your spouse. You might need to communicate it to your spouse, but you definitely need to talk to God about it. Right? I got to confess my heart, but confess with my mouth and believe in my heart. And I know that's what we talk about salvation. But God, I need to confess this thing is still got a hold on me. This thing is still, this illegal covenant is still walking with me. I got to confess that thing, God. And then I've got to believe in my heart that you can take that thing away from me. Help me get rid of this illegal covenant. That illegal covenant is any covenant you cut with someone else, either through sex or other means, that is overriding or hindering the validity or the cohesiveness of your covenant that you have with your spouse. I got to communicate that. I got to say it out of my mouth, right? Then I've got to go through the process. I got to count up the cost of holding on to that. Because when you have memories with other men, other women, and you have not divorced yourself from those covenants, when you have tough times, I'm here to testify. I'm here to testify. You maybe you can leave me out here by myself, or you can drop I know what you're talking about down there if you can do it safely and not get in trouble with your spouse. Um, you got to count up the cost of what it's going to cost you for not. Just because they out of your sight don't mean they out of your mind. Just because they out of your sight don't mean they out of your heart. You got to count up the cost of continuing to hold on to that. Then you got to separate from common things. Oh, me and my partner, we was talking about it, like we went deep. One of the common things that you've got to make sure that you separate from, like, man, you might have had a favorite sex position with that person. Nah, I can't even do that with my wife. I can't even go into that sexual position because it's tied to an illegal covenant and I hadn't divorced it. So I can't even go into that realm or into that position without that person maybe flashing across your mind. I know you don't want to get this real. Y'all don't want to get real. Y'all want to pity pat the challenges and the things that are on the inside that only nobody else sees, only you see when you look in the mirror. But if you really want to get real, that you have that momentary, you can remember how he or she used to do it. Yeah, you got to separate from the common. Even it might have been a favorite movie or a favorite song. I got to separate from those things that would trigger that memory, that would renew that covenant, that would bring back reminders of those moments. I got to separate with the common. And then I got to wait and be consistent and responsive. And every time God points something out to me that I need to change, that I need to do differently, that I need to let go to make sure that that illegal covenant is killed, I got to be responsive to that. Then I got to go to that final order. I got to go to that place where I get a place. For us, the final order is peace. When I now have peace, I ain't saying you might not never be able to do that special sexual move, but you're going to have to get to a place that when you do it, there is no one else on your mind but your spouse. Because you've reached a peace. You've broken the illegal covenant. And then you got to move on. You got to move on from that moment. You got to move on for the reason you was holding on to it. You got to move on. Now, can you relate to the divorces that you need to make in your life? Listen, I know I covered exes, but what about some of the pain and the trauma that you say you've moved on from, but in reality, it's still your security blanket? because better the pain you know than the pain you don't. And so it conditions you in how you respond to your spouse, even in seemingly positive ways. And when I say in positive ways, you may your spouse is very demanding, and that reminds you of a time when you were hurt and wounded. So now you're a spouse pleaser, like you go over the top because you don't want to lose them like you lost somebody else, and you're hoping that'll keep them, as opposed to actually setting healthy boundaries and having healthy communication with your existing spouse. You need a divorce. So this is what I want you to do. I want you to write down one thing you need to divorce that has the potential to add value to and health to your relationship. Write down just one thing that can add value and health to your current relationship. Even better, one thing that can just add value and health to you, then to your relationship. Listen, woo, we got to divorce some stuff, folks. We got to divorce some stuff. I want you to know that at the end of the day, there's a lot of things that we have to overcome if we're going to have truly healthy relationships. You need to divorce the things that are holding you back so that you and your spouse can grow. Listen, that's all I have for you today. And I want to thank you for tuning in to another episode of The Prompt. And remember, what doesn't get talked about doesn't get healed, and what doesn't get asked doesn't get answered. And I'll see you on the next video.